for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Okay. Mr. New Secretary, roll call.
Pam Morlow,
Here.
Daniel Vergari,
Here.
TJ McLaughlin,
Here.
Kevin Frost here, Daryl Lewandowski,
Here.
Bart Can,
No Bart.
Robert Rizzo,
Here.
Okay. Thank you. Number 4, approval of the agenda.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as submitted for August 16th, 2021, as submitted.
Second the motion.
All those in favor of approving the agenda as submitted, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Agenda passes. Public comment. Ms. Bonnie?
Will we be able to talk on subjects as they come up, like number 9?
Yes.
Okay, then I'll reserve my comments.
Okay. Okay. Chairperson comment?
Yes.
None? Okay. Public hearing, vehicle fuel station and local commercial zoning ordinance text amendment. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing?
I'll make the motion.
Thank
Make
you.
a motion to open the public hearing for the fuel service station, local commercial zoning ordinance, August 16th, 2021,
7:33.
37.
33.
Oh, 33, I'm sorry.
33. Thank you. Okay.
Madam Chair, would you like me to start with a report?
Brief.
Sure.
Oh, we have a second. We have to second it.
Sorry.
I'll second. TJ seconds. Thank you. Okay, the public hearing is open. We'll start with the planner. Just a brief overview for
Okay.
the public.
So this is a petition to amend the zoning ordinance. It was brought forth by a property owner who owns property at a 6009 mile, 7 mile, 60097 mile, and 8770 Pontiac Trail. The zoning ordinance does allow for property owners within the township to bring forth petitions to amend the zoning ordinance. As you know, typically that's something that's initiated by the planning commission or the board based on needs that were recognized in the community. In this case, what they are asking for, the property that they own is zoned local commercial, planned local commercial and zoned local commercial. That district does not allow for fueling stations, but there are a number of other locations within the township that do allow for fueling stations. General commercial as a special use, highway commercial permitted by right, and in both industrial districts as a special use. And those are subject to supplemental regulations in section 40.407. So as you know, some of the uses in the use table, in addition to being permitted, also have additional standards over and above what's in table number 30, which sets things like setbacks, height regulations, lot coverage, etc. So in some cases, it's recognized that particular uses need additional standards. So those standards do cover not only fueling stations, but service stations, and the applicant is really only asking that the local commercial district allow then for fueling stations, not the service stations or any vehicle repair, but just the fuel pumps, subject to whatever standards in that section relate to that. So we put forth a memo that you have in front of you, and hopefully you all had the chance to read it. The local commercial zoning district is intended to be just that, a local commercial zoning district, which provides immediate needs, convenience needs for those folks in the immediate area, for residential uses in the immediate area. So the applicant's contention is that this provides such a need, and with the right restrictions could be compatible with that district. So we ask you to consider that against both the policies in the master plan, the regulations in the zoning ordinance to determine whether or not this is in fact something that would be consistent with that district. We would suggest that there may be additional standards that you might think about. In addition to those, that there may be some additional standards to make sure that this use is consistent and compatible with that local zoning commercial, local commercial zoning. And one example might be a limitation on the number of pumps, perhaps. You see some fueling stations that have, dozens of pumps. They're huge canopy, kind of a really intrusive type of use on the land that may not be compatible in that area. So that's something, as an example of something that you might consider. Ultimately, with a zoning ordinance text amendment, the Planning Commission, after a public hearing and discussion, would make a recommendation to the Township Board to approve, to deny, or approve the changes. Oftentimes, as you know, these things take some more consideration. So we didn't really dive too deeply into specific proposals or going through the zoning ordinance to find all the detailed areas that might need to be changed. If you do feel like you want to move forward with this, we would suggest that you give us that direction on a staff level to go through the ordinance with a fine-tooth comb and make sure we find all those elements that might need to be updated or any additional changes that you think are appropriate. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
So the public hearing starts with us, not them.
You can ask any questions for clarification about the report, but then certainly you want to open it up to the public. I wouldn't
Okay.
discuss until after the public hearing. That's the second item on the agenda.
Okay.
And the applicant is here as well, if you want to hear a presentation from them, excuse me.
Yes, let's start with the applicant.
May I approach?
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you. My name is Joe Rogowski. I'm here on behalf of the property owner, Carl Patterson. I think the planner laid out our request pretty well. We attempted to do, to proactively suggest restrictions. Obviously, if there's additional ones that you would make you more comfortable, we obviously have to hear about that. I think it is important to note that this combination is allowed, with a conditional use permit in other locations in the township. However, the market has not developed those to date because we believe the market doesn't really care for those locations. And we've taken a look at, my client has looked at this and studied it and feels that this particular location and these areas is well suited for this type of combined use. And it's not a novel use. We all know everywhere from Monroe to Traverse City and into the UP, we see this is the development trend in the state over the last 10 plus years, where you've got the convenience store, which is currently operating there, and then they bring in some fuel pumps because people like them. They like the convenience. And so we're trying to meet that appetite of the residents in these different communities. We've done them, and I think that with the right restrictions that we've laid out, and maybe some additional ones you have, it'd be a type of use that the community would be really happy with the upgrade, and it'd be a big convenience for your residents, and I think they would like it. I think that the history has shown that people like them, and I hope you have a favorable view of it. And if you have any other questions for me or Mr. Patterson or his partner, we'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. Does anybody want to start, or?
I just have one question. Mr. Patterson, you own a store that's right now presently at 7 in Pontiac Trail?
Yes, I do, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I've owned it for about 17 years now.
Yeah, the stores and gas stations have been together for decades and decades, as you were talking. Is that really a new thing? It's been going on for a long time.
And as, can I speak?
Sure.
As an owner, with that trend in the state of Michigan, it's going to be more and more difficult for convenience stores to operate independently, and even gas stations operate independently. You know, since the state had allowed the combination of the two, it's just what's going to happen. So, for my long-term viability there, this is very, very important to me.
Yeah.
Just how many pumps would you be anticipating? Four pumps?
4 pumping stations.
Or 4 dual pumps?
Yeah, they'd be able to pull on each side.
So that's a total of 8 then?
Yeah, well, there's 4 pumping stations, 8. You'd be able to put 8 cars in at one time.
I don't have a problem, but the number of pumps bothers me because it's, you know, the corner has been a log cabin store for years. And when I tell anybody where I'm going to the log cabin, they know exactly where I'm going.
Well, you know what? You still won't have to change what you tell people, okay?
Now, the log cabin is going to go away?
Well, one of the things, and one of the reasons that I'm partnering with Mike and his partner also, the two of them, their current stations, they have 12, I think, at the current time. All 12 are located in rural areas. Pinckney, you know, they're not located in Detroit, Farmington, Inkster, or anything like that. They specialize in putting stations into communities like ours. And they have different models of architecture that we can show you, okay? And there's 2 of them that we think that would fit, that they already have in place in other places. One's called a Red Barn, but the other one, which I think we're considering the most, and we'll probably make a presentation to you, it looks like the store right now that we have, okay? It's wood. And it would be set back from the current store back further, off of the corner more, because of, you know, I own the property behind. And so it's set back a little bit more. And, but it looked very similar to what we have right now.
Going to the log cabin there, that's okay.
Yeah. So you'll still be able to tell people that.
All right, thank you.
So I think what we want to start with, if there are any questions pertaining to allowing, are there any questions? I'm just curious from you guys about questions.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but before you get into your discussion, make sure you finished the public hearing, get any
Okay.
comments from the public, and then you can close that and get into the discussion.
Okay, I was gonna see if anybody wanted to just stay on the putting service stations in the area before we got too involved in questions of going down the road to the gas station. Does that make sense? Or is that just save that?
I think maybe just finish getting the public comment, and then you can close that and get into
Okay,
your discussion.
sure. Bruce?
Just curious, from a traffic standpoint, would you have any increase on the amount of traffic for the draw in that area?
Yeah, Mike?
Hi. So, with a gas station or a fueling station, it actually retains traffic. So as civil engineers have done their homework, gas stations retain traffic off the road. So those cars are on the road, we consume those cars sit 5-10 minutes and only yield back onto the road when traffic is clear. So there would be no additional traffic. Matter of fact, we would make less traffic because we would be retaining vehicles off the road. We wouldn't be adding vehicles onto the road.
So there won't be a draw from drawing people towards that corner?
No, it wouldn't be a destination site, so it wouldn't be something that somebody would want to veer out from 2-3 miles or 4 miles away. It would be neighborhood use, so it would be the neighborhood that would be coming in where they would already normally be passing through or driving. So we wouldn't be a destination site where people outside the community would say we would want to come there to fuel our cars, because there would be no reason to pass 5 other fueling stations to get to us. So they would specifically be neighborhood use, neighborhood vehicles that are already passing through conveniently to get home, that would want to draw their attention into coming in and fueling with us.
Any other questions?
Little drum rolls.
Mine's off. Any other questions?
Somebody's got their mic on and it's interfering with this mic.
Who's got their mic on? Putting a spell on that thing? Good try. Okay, we're not gonna go a whole meeting like that. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Linda?
At what point will we hear from the public tonight?
Well, I've asked the public if they have any questions.
That's not
Twice.
what a public hearing is, it's not whether I have a question. A public hearing is to hear from the public, it's comments.
Right.
So I'd like to state for the record tonight that you opened this public hearing at 7:33, and it's just now when I asked for clarification that we, the public, have been able to speak. A public hearing is not to have the consultant give an oral report for what he's written. It's not to hear from the applicant.
Do you have a question, Linda?
It's not a question and answer session. A public hearing,
comment, I'm sorry.
I don't have to have a question, I can make a comment.
Okay.
And I think that you guys have missed the boat for the first 12 minutes of this public hearing, when the public were not allowed to comment, but we heard from everybody else. I think it was a huge mistake.
Well, for the third time, does the public have any comments? And so far, Bruce is the only one that has had a comment or a question. Do you have one?
No, I'm for it. I think in order for a car to survive, it's gonna have to put gas pumps in. So I'm definitely for it. It's, and Corner General is a great store. I live in that neighborhood.
And I'm sorry, what's your name?
Richard Wysack.
Okay.
It's a great store. I go there every day. And everybody in the neighborhood, everybody in the community goes there, you know. So it's a great store, and in order for him to survive, I think he's gonna have to do that. Because everybody else around him does have gas pumps, you know, so it's like, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You get, get your gas and go to the store, so.
Okay. Bonnie?
Is this fueling station gonna include electric?
Yes.
Okay.
Not originally, no, but once it's consumer driven, so once the consumer asks for more and more, and there's more electric vehicles out on the road, then there would be, probably another petition to add an electric station onto the site. But originally, there would not be, because
Okay, so the answer was no.
yes. But it's no and yes. When the consumer wants it, they
What
can.
you're petitioning for tonight is with no.
With no fuel, no electric.
electric, that's right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We have a motion to close the public hearing. Right?
I make a motion to close the public hearing for the fueling station and local commercial zoning ordinance as of 7:50 PM.
have a second?
Second the motion.
Okay, public hearing is closed. New business items, vehicle fuel station and local commercial zoning ordinance text amendment. AJ, you wanna say something?
Well, I have a question for Paul. So we were looking at that other location down at North Territorial Pine Trail area. They came to us wanting to revive the fuel station thing. How were we grandfathering that? Because I was trying to remember how is that we were even entertaining it if they would be unable in the local commercial. So it wasn't a conditional, it wasn't gonna be a conditional use either, it was gonna just be grandfathered.
Exactly, that's correct.
Yeah.
That was the interpretation at the time, was that was an existing gas station, so they were gonna be able to put those pumps back.
Okay. Because if we change the text amendment, then we can have gas stations in every local commercial area.
So, that's correct. This would not just apply to Mr. Patterson's particular location, this would be changed in the zoning ordinance, changed for that district, so anybody in the local commercial could bring this forward. The proposal is to make it a conditional use, so you would go through that conditional use permit process.
Well, can you, is one of the, now, the zoning board or the, can also put additional restrictions on what they would like in that local commercial zone area, such as only on certain traffic, streets that do require certain traffic volumes and things.
The way we worded the new text amendment was
Yeah.
so not all local commercial would fall into a fueling station, meaning frontage. So the way we worded it was so that not every local commercial would actually.
Be it on a
hit
main thoroughfare
Yeah.
through the township, there was not just a local road.
Yeah, the text amendment wasn't broad. It was-
I think that, I understand what you're saying, and we appreciate that. I think that something that the planning commission would like to, should consider is because this is a gas station and currently it's only allowed and has all the criteria in the general commercial, all the more heavy use areas, is that I think we should have Paul go through some of that and make it so if gas stations, fuel stations are allowed in the local commercial, which is a small neighborhood, like what you're looking for, is that we need to update our ordinances, or at least go through them and look at them to ensure that there's appropriate criteria.
So, as I mentioned during my report, section 40.407 does have additional standards for motor vehicle service centers, repair stations, and fueling stations. So what the applicant has proposed is that those standards from that section that would apply to a fuel station would obviously apply to that use in the local commercial district. What Mr. Patterson was just mentioning is that they also proposed some additional changes to that section to require that it could only be located on, I can't remember, was it an arterial road or a major road as defined in our ordinance. So I think that's an appropriate step towards your point there, if you want to allow these, so that blanketly I said, yes, it would apply to any local commercial, but then they would also have to meet those additional standards. The other thing that I mentioned during my report is there may be some additional standards that you guys would like to consider. So they did, they're being respectful about this local commercial district and providing those. The one, example that popped into my head was that, you would probably want to limit the number of pumps so you didn't have like a super station. If somebody happened to have 10 acres that were located in the local commercial district, I don't think that that's a real case based on my knowledge of where those local commercial districts are. But they could put in something like a Love's or something like that, and I don't think that that's what you want to see there. You don't want to see one of these super gas stations. Even like the Speedway at the corner of back in North Territorial is probably larger than something that you'd want to see in the local commercial district. So certainly we can look at that. We didn't put a lot of time and effort in going through all the details in the zoning ordinance because obviously we wanted to get the direction from you all after you held the public hearing and discussed it. So if that's the direction you want us to go, we can certainly come back with some additional suggestions, go through and draft up zoning ordinance amendments and red line like we typically do and bring those back to you if that's the direction you send us on.
Right. And just, I guess, just off the top of my head, some of the things that I would like to see that it's in keeping with the community and in the master plan, the size of the store, obviously setbacks and what is around it. I know Mr. Patterson has some neighbors over there, so I think setbacks should be looked at. I'm not saying I know the answer, I'm just saying I think it should be looked at. So just to ensure that it's appropriate and once, appropriate can be supported by the neighborhood. I like the idea of the main roads, because that's kind of the purpose of it, right? See, size of buildings, setbacks.
Is the building, the maximum size in the light commercial is 4,000 square feet?
That's correct.
The unit that we're looking at and will propose is actually going to be in that size. So we're not even going to have to ask for any variance in size of building.
A quick question. Paul, can I ask Mr. Patterson a quick question?
Don't ask me, ask Pam.
Sure.
Yes.
Can I ask you, Mr. Patterson? You've had it for 17 years, just out of curiosity, you've had it for 17 years. Once, this business, correct, 17 years?
Right.
Once you get the gas station, if it's approved and gets built, are you staying on or are you selling the store too?
I am staying on a consulting basis with them. And so I'll be there, not so much for the gas station, just the liquor store portion.
What size?
My expertise is not in the gas, that's why we're doing this.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Paul, how many local commercial areas are in the township? 7 Mile, Chubb, 5 Mile Pontiac Trail, 7 Mile Pontiac Trail, and does North Territorial and Pontiac Trail considered just the 4?
And there is one additional plant. Did you say 5 Mile?
Yeah, 5 Mile Pontiac Trail.
I don't know that 5 Mile and Pontiac Trail is zoned local commercial, but I think it's planned local commercial. I can verify that though.
Well, there's some research that I was told today that that way used to be a small community there years and years and years ago. If you could actually find an old timer.
Yes, it's Warden, I believe is the name.
Yes, that's the name.
So there is a cluster of local commercial at Pontiac Trail and North Territorial. I believe the master plan indicates that 5 Mile and Pontiac Trail is planned to be a local commercial node. There is some local commercial zoning at 6 Mile and Pontiac Trail, also planned that way, and the same at 7. 7's probably the biggest cluster. Oh, and there is also, I'm sorry, the 7 Mile Party Store, but
7 Mile and Chubb, I guess that's what they consider that area, okay.
What size is the store now?
The square footage?
Yeah.
2,000. So I think our building would be the exact same size as what the garden center is going to be, kitty corner to us.
anyone have anything other that I mentioned that they thought should be looked at? No? No?
I agree with you. I think we ought to be aware of the ramifications on other locations. I can't see one location restricting the other locations. There has to be a uniform code in place that's applicable across the board, you know, with small variations, you know. So I think that's something that maybe we need to postpone this until we can look at having a uniform policy.
Paul, if it's a conditional use, then we would have some say if every mile going down Pontiac Trail, someone all of a sudden wants to put a gas station in. If it's conditional,
So if
it
it's,
needs to be based on need, the community need, right? And you don't need a gas station every mile.
so that may be difficult to demonstrate.
Okay.
Because it would be, you know, your perception versus what the applicant might say the market is dictating. With a conditional use, it's likely an okay use. You have the ability to look at it with the criteria in the zoning ordinance to make sure that it's gonna be harmonious with the area, it's not gonna cause a nuisance, that kind of thing. Typically, if it's a use that's proposed as a conditional use in that district, it's gonna be okay. You just may have to place some additional restrictions on it. So you can add conditions to your approval. Those conditions have to serve some kind of governmental purpose, though. They have to serve some need. They can't be arbitrary, basically. You have to say, okay, we look at this site and recognize by virtue of what they're proposing, it could potentially create this nuisance or cause this problem for the neighbors. Therefore, we're gonna place this additional restriction over and above what is already in the zoning ordinance. So
Local commercial would be conditional too then?
that's what they're proposing, is that the gas station would be conditional. So if you were going to do something like that, you know, I have seen in zoning ordinances where there are restrictions placed on the spacing between particular uses, like liquor stores may be an example of that, where they say you can't have you can't have a liquor store within so many feet of a school or a church, or you can't have a liquor store within so many feet of another liquor store. So if that was something that you were thinking, that you wouldn't want to see a gas station on every corner, then you could potentially place a restriction like that. Again, that would be,
But if, so, that answers my question. If you
Yeah.
made the change, it's basically saying, yes, everywhere there's local commercial,
you have the potential to put
you
that in
have
there.
the potential. So that's
I mean, you could certainly look at a particular site and on its merit determine that it's not appropriate there and therefore deny the conditional use permit. But saying, well, we think there are too many, might be a difficult one to, stand up as an argument.
And part of the zoning ordinance,
Just a minute, Carl, please. Bob,
Okay.
question.
Oh, I just, how close are the nearest homes in that area anyways? Is that any type of an issue at all?
Right next door.
One house?
Yeah, to the
Is-
east,
Neighborhood.
to the east.
There is a neighborhood right there?
Yeah, a house to the east and a house to the south across the street, other than nothing on the west side. And the
There's-
first business south of that is Alexander's Repair Shop, small engine repair. That's
Okay,
it.
so my question is, if it's going to be a conditional use, is it like a zoning board of, a zoning variance? Does the neighbors have to be notified or anything, or not through the conditional process? Is that right, Paul, or no?
Yes, if you were doing a conditional use, you have to hold a public hearing, just like we did for this rezoning tonight, or like you would for a variance or something of that nature that holds a public hearing. Notification requirements are for property owners within 300 feet of the border of the subject property. But again, it's not a vote of the public, it's not a vote of the people who show up. It's That's for input and perspective.
Right.
You all make the decision based on the criteria that's in the zoning
So
ordinance.
were neighbors notified of tonight's meeting or not? Not yet?
So because this is a zoning ordinance text amendment, which is just a general amendment, it's not specific to this property. The only thing that's specific to this property is in order to bring forth a petition to change the zoning ordinance, you have to be a property owner in the township. And I think it's obvious from our discussion what the applicant's intent is, but this was something that will change the ordinance for the local commercial zoning district, not just his property.
Thank you.
I believe the one house that's next to me, his land is already zoned local commercial, if I'm not mistaken, even though it's a residence.
It does appear that that is the case.
Might be two of them.
The, 5 parcels going north from their property on the west, on the east side are zone local commercial. About a portion about the same depth as the local commercial for the garden center that you all approved earlier. Something about that depth, it's not the full parcel, but it's a similar situation where there's split zoning. On the corner, the northwest corner is also zone local commercial, and then about the same depth on the southeast corner. Two parcels fully zoned local commercial and one parcel
We're gonna make
partially
sure we
zoned.
want to look at it. Did anybody have any suggestions or thoughts on like spacing? Paul mentioned, well, because TJ mentioned, just within the last couple months, this is the second gas station that has been brought up, gas station, so.
I just don't wanna see a, Pontiac Trail like north, South Line is, you can go from there to 8 mile to 9 mile. and you got
Right.
4 stations.
So looking at
3
this
stations.
map,
And one,
so-
it
right.
winds up like a drugstore on every corner, or a bank on every corner.
So that's what I'm saying.
We just don't think, I don't think it should be a gas station on every corner. I like the layout, this is what they got now, Pontiac Trail, 5
But,
miles.
So what we're saying is if you don't like that, do you wanna make a suggestion of spacing requirements? This is what the map looks like. So we just.
You can't go by the
it's like
mile, what if you
here,
were to bypass
here,
six?
here, here. So, if anybody had any thoughts on that, or do we just tell Paul we don't want it to look like South Lyon and let him come back with it, see what he comes back with?
Can we make a quick comment on what your discussion is real quick?
Just a minute, well,
Okay.
let's
Yeah,
let
okay.
these guys
Okay.
do their thing. See, so this is, like at 6 Mile, there's some sort, what is it? It's a utility company or gas company, or they
It's
just
a
have
Washtenaw
a Washtenaw County Road Commission, okay,
Because
something
of all
like
the
that.
salt.
So the property immediately on the corner just north of the road commission parcel is vacant and for sale. It is only,
Right up the corner is the house.
it's only 2.5 acres and most of that is wetland. So I don't know if that would support a station and setbacks and stormwater facilities and all that, but
That's 6 Mile?
that's it.
Yes.
So we really don't have anything.
Nothing there.
West corner.
You mentioned spacing, so between gas stations or liquor store to liquor store or liquor store versus school. And I don't think any of that applies other than a potential another convenience store. I don't know how many would put that at 2.5 acres.
Right.
Well, that,
Wetland, so. but
that
price
corner,
change.
I'm sorry, that corner is planned as a local commercial node, so somebody could potentially split off a 5-acre parcel on the southeast corner from the farm field, come in and petition to rezone it, that would be consistent with the master plan. So there is opportunity for other spaces, it's not just what you're doing.
Like a 2 mile stretch, or something like that. I don't know, what do other communities, why don't you look in what other communities do?
I
Maybe
hear
come
what you're
back with
asking about,
something,
and I can-
And we'll see if we can move,
I'll try to
if
craft
there's
something
any
like that.
questions, move forward. To our next favorite subject.
suggestions that would help, you know, prevent that slippery slope that you're concerned about. I would also note that, you know, in order for someone to do this, they would have to have a party store, they'd have to get a liquor license, and we have not seen a development of a cascade of party stores along Pontiac Trail or 7 Mile. You know,
You're saying that this situation is the pattern when you mentioned liquor also? Because most of the gas stations that have a convenience store don't have liquor.
Well, that may be not the case here, I don't know that, but I do know that, the point I was trying to make is that we haven't seen party stores developing in this local commercial district along the corridor when they could have. I just don't think the market would support it. It's, you know, it's sort of like the first one in, you know, they will have an ample opportunity to service, and I think the restrictions would limit, you know, that ability going forward. And, you know, we want to add additional ones, that would be great.
Linda?
The reason that you don't have a proliferation of liquor stores is because there's only so many liquor licenses allowed in the community. It's based on the size of the community. And Salem has all of the liquor licenses that we're allowed for our size. So that's not a valid argument.
We're agreeing with what you're saying. We're saying there wouldn't be any more.
And the reason I bring this up is we're just trying to look at our map.
Yeah.
And think ahead. We're trying, I mean, we don't have any crystal balls here, but we're just trying to think ahead. So it's nice when the community shows up, all 5 of you, 6, 7 now, 6, 7, to get some added input. We can't possibly think of everything, but, you know, the more we sometimes talk out loud, sometimes we wish you'd take it back, but, other times. But, I mean, it's important to talk about these things and bring them out, because the more we kind of, you know, play with the Play-Doh, it kind of creates a better mold, so, thank you for that. Okay, I don't have any other questions. Yeah, we have a variety of options, and, okay, then, why don't you tell us what you think?
Make a motion to postpone action on proposed zoning ordinance text amendment and direct staff to update sections of the zoning ordinance to allow for vehicle fueling stations as a conditional use in the LC district, subject to the supplemental regulations in 40.407 and update section 40.407 to include additional standards.
Is that Darryl?
Yes.
Okay. I think that's a good idea. And so, and I guess just to kind of reiterate Paul, some of the things I had to look at, I mean, I did see what they suggested with things, limit pumps, I like the main road, look at the size of the building, setbacks and whatnot. Dan mentioned ramifications on other locations, it's conditional use, and just look at the spacing. Okay. So we have a motion. And we'll do a roll call vote.
Ready?
Ready?
Pam Marlar,
Yes.
Daniel Vigaris,
Yes.
TJ McLaughlin,
Yes.
Kevin Frost, yes. Darrell Lewandowski,
Yes.
Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So we'll check it out. It's all good ideas. We just need to make sure, because it's brand new,
Yeah,
that it all.
we tried to do
fits
most
in.
of the homework, but Paul
Yeah.
can touch base on
Yeah.
what we.
Oh, yes,
I'm
you
happy
had,
to share.
did you have one more
Yes.
question, or Carl?
The only other question I had is, what kind of timeframe do you need to do this?
Try to clean it up and bring it back to the next meeting. It's typically what we do.
Great, great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Okay, the next one, oh, here we are again. Can all send TJ.
You don't want me to go anywhere, you don't want to
For
drive.
old business item, number 9, old business items. Welcome. Thank you, TJ.
Nothing wrong with it, TJ, I appreciate it.
No problem. Accessory building ordinance. They did not. They didn't like it either. I didn't like it. I didn't like it, but for some stupid reason I voted for it. I guess I got sucked into live free or die. And I died on the vine, so now we've been brought back to life for a second opportunity. No, that's a good idea. I'm glad they didn't go through it. Okay. Back onto the accessory buildings. Okay, did everybody go through this? It is, did any, okay. Kevin, you want to start? Do you have any questions or concerns?
I think the concern was about the sea containers being a residential area, maybe in the hamlet. It seemed like that was a big question. I think we argued about an hour just on that.
Yeah.
Another thing was the numbers. They
The numbers
wanted
were high.
The numbers they wanted lower than what we recommended. And then you should be lower.
And I think there was an issue just from, well, a couple people about in the screening of cargo containers. There was some that said, no, just not naming, no cargo containers, some didn't like that.
Right.
I'll just use some as a loose terminology, and other one says, well, if we're gonna have it, to screen it completely. So, I mean, I don't know if you wanna put a roof on it, which is, and I know.
Neighbor in back of me, his wife got fed up with the container because it looked so hideous, she just had it removed.
They're not that cheap.
She sold it at a loss of 50% just to get rid of it. They're about $6,000, $7,000, I guess.
Not necessarily. It depends, it goes up and down.
Yeah.
The last I saw it was like about 1,400 to 1,600 was a cheap one.
Yeah, I've seen some for about 25.
Yeah, I guess, so it changes based on mandate or,
Well, it
okay, well,
depends.
just like anything else, so.
It depends where you're getting it from.
Yeah.
There's some that are, for 1,200, it just depends who and where you're getting it from.
So, DJ.
Well, the board's gonna make the decision on this, right?
Well, no, we are gonna look at it again, make our recommendation, and then they'll approve it or not. They didn't like what we sent last time, which I don't blame them. I didn't care for it either. I thought 10 was too high. I didn't see. My concern was, I think as a planning commission, we got torn between giving people their rights and freedoms to do what they want in their property without, a lot of people just don't seem to wanna look at it, and it's not, is it in keeping with the community within the master plan? I mean, does a sea container belong in an agricultural, is that the appropriate look? Is that the look that we're going for? And then the issue came of, well, who are you to say that it's ugly? And I think that we are people that are appointed to the planning commission, but then it also turns out that people that were voted in on the board also thought the same thing. So I guess as representatives of the community, we need to make the decision. So we are the people that.
There's two issues here though, right? The sea containers and the number of auxiliary buildings.
Correct, but I think what
Okay.
was different was the sea containers was being included as an accessory building, where now in this, it's been pulled out. No.
In this iteration, so I took a stab at addressing the concerns that came out of the motion from the board. And, you know, they said to look at the accessory structure ordinance. Specifically, they requested a determination regarding the number of structures, an update to the definition of the accessory structures, because we kind of went round and round about what wasn't an accessory structure. And then to define shipping containers and how they fit into the residential district, noting that they're more industrial in nature. So I did take a stab at that. I updated the definitions, but then, if you recall, item 5C got into specific standards for sea containers, and there were 7 of them. At this point, I added an additional one. So those conditions include, I'll just read them off so that everybody's on the same page. Cargo containers used as accessory structures shall not be located on a lot less than 2 acres in size. No more than 1 cargo container, oh, this is the one that I added. No more than 1 cargo container may be used as an accessory structure.
Right.
But maybe you don't want to allow for any, or maybe, let me continue and then we can speculate. Number 3, cargo containers used as detached accessory structures shall not be allowed in the front yard, even if they meet the standards in section A above. Those were the exemptions that we dealt with a few years ago. Number 4, cargo containers shall be used as detached accessory structure shall not be located in the required rear or side yard. I guess that goes without saying. Cargo containers used for accessory structures shall not be stacked above the height of a single container. Cargo containers shall be completely screened from view of abutting properties using the standards from section 60.09D, methods of screening. Cargo containers shall be located upon an approved foundation that will support the weight of the structure and prevent road infestation. And cargo containers of any size require a building. So I think in question here is, do you want to allow them at all? And then, is the screening requirements from section 60.09D acceptable? And I think some of the concern is if you're putting this into a residential setting, somebody may have a second story. You know, section 60.09 is typically screening from the road, screening from the property line. But if you're sitting on your balcony or your deck or looking out your bedroom window, and you can see down and see the top of this over and above the screening, you know, that's maybe where the roof idea comes in, if you want to allow for that. So I think what the board
Have
is
any
saying is,
communities that you're aware of not allowed?
some communities have prohibited them outright.
Like,
Yeah.
like our, similar to ours, or are they allowing them in, or? I'll get to you, Bonnie, in just a minute, okay?
I can't tell you off the top of my head which ones, I'm sorry.
But are they like our communities, do you know?
Nobody's quite like Salem.
Is what?
Nobody's quite like Salem.
But we've got them on lots of.
Turn that off.
I just unplugged that thing.
Yeah, turn it off.
It's 'cause-
Is that it? Is that the culprit? No.
You gotta push on the little button.
Can't we restrict them to commercial area or industrial area?
Farming.
It's not.
No, I don't want to
We,
see the farm.
can you split it or?
And eliminate. But the restrictions of, you know, like Shell Road only, commercial business.
Well, whatever zone, like, you know, heavy industrial.
Industrial goes there, I can't see why it would not be permitted to use there. But my big concern is it's the residential area. I think they're ugly, I don't like looking at them, and there's one guy on the board, he says, They got a balcony on the end of my bedroom, and I have to look at one of those at the top. And that's an elected board member.
I unplugged it, and it's not that one.
Is there,
Is everybody off?
Mine's on all.
Linda just mentioned maybe somebody's cell phone is close to a microphone and getting
Picking up a vibration.
Okay. TJ, did you have thoughts you want to share?
As far as the cargo containers?
Yeah.
I mean, there's already something in here, but you can't have one unless you have at least 2 acres. And it has to be screened, and whether I think it's ugly or not, I just think if someone has a problem with it, there are nice, Plymouth, Northville, Novi, you know, lots of places don't allow them. When you're out in a more rural area like this, to me, it just kind of comes with it, that you're gonna get some more variety of properties.
Yeah.
is the USD gonna permit them?
That's what it was gonna be my
It's
question.
okay, the USD is a PUD.
They won't
It's
have
a
the
planned
lot
unit
size.
development, they have a lot more,
They
they
will
have a
their
lot
own
of restrictions
HOA,
there, plus it's
and
not
they can
2
make
acre
up whatever
parcels.
rules they want.
Yeah, so they
And
will
they'll
likely
enforce it.
have
That's
a,
I'll
okay.
give you guys 2 minutes.
That's okay.
as Bob said, that they will likely have an HOA with deed restrictions that prohibit things like that.
And also areas that have gated communities, or like that one member that we have on the board, they can put their own rules in their gated communities also if they do not want to look at these sea containers.
I think if they're screened, then you don't have to look at it. But I do agree
Screening
with,
requirements, I'm sorry.
yeah, the screening requirements, I guess, were my question, you know, if it's on 2 acre lots, which is common, somebody has a double, 2-story house, if it's not screened from the top, then it's not screened.
Hey Pam, I think too, if the community was that opposed to sea containers, we would have a room full of people. If it was that many people opposed to it.
Well, that could say either way.
I'm opposed to it, because we don't have enough controls in place to deal with them properly, and we have too many instances of narrow lots where, because we don't have the, 80% of our community is RA2, and the lot size is variance, too much variance to make the restriction strictly RA2 for making it in a 2 acre minimum, because RA2 is 80% of this community. Yet there's a big difference between Linda's farm and all those people in
Well,
Salem
that's true.
farm.
So should
where
it
they
be
have-
more conditional then?
I think there's a few more conditions, and not just people 2-story house, by the way. With our rolling hills, sometimes I can see down to a house lower, so. And there's a few other conditions that are existing or available to us that we could utilize in the building code side, where you're getting, where at least it's a structurally sound unit. Because at 12, you buy, how are we gonna govern between the guy who buys a $1,200 sea container from the $6,000 sea container that's nicely painted, in good condition, no rotted floors, and then somebody finds something that's no longer worthy of being put on a ship, is now, sea container in a backyard. So it's a very difficult thing to regulate, at least with the conditions that we have of saying RA2, 2 acres, because that's 80% of this community. And
Right,
so
but
there's
I
a
don't
lot
think-
of developments that don't have HOAs yet, or haven't, including where I live now. There's no HOA, there's just a few deed restrictions, and shipping containers wasn't a thought at the time of being a deed restriction. So it's gonna be, it's something you gotta consider, that you gotta somehow get it to go through
Right.
somewhere that, is.
Yeah, but I don't want to base decisions on revising ordinances based on my personal likings. That's not what I'm up here for. It's just what Bob Rizzo wants to see.
Mhm.
We are a board, and we represent the township. So I keep hearing, I personally, I don't like the looks of this, or I don't like the looks of that, but I don't think it should be a personal thing.
Fine.
Okay.
I told you I'd get to ya.
You want to speak first, and Bonnie's here.
Well, I know, but there's been a couple people that have spoken out of turn, and as a courtesy, because we're small,
Yeah.
we
Yeah,
just
okay,
did, so
Mr.
let's hit it.
President. Now,
I apologize.
I understand
You're
that
right,
all you people don't like how they look, or some of you don't like how they look. First of all, everybody that has 2 acres or more, I believe, has a 30-foot setback or something like that. And why are you looking in the neighbor's yard? If you don't like what the neighbor's got, you put up your own screen. Next, I have this analogy, almost said anomaly. I have this analogy. Now, if I was on the board and I didn't, and everybody in the township, or a lot of people in the township had gravel driveways, and I hate the way gravel driveways look, and I wanted to pass a rule, just because I hate the way they look, I wanted everybody to have a cement driveway. That's what you're doing. And if you're going to do it on account of its personal preference, you ought to get off the board.
Linda,
I just have a simple question. Is bona fide agricultural exempt from this? Because I didn't see it in what Paul presented. And it was my understanding, even from what the board said, that the board members who do not want these cargo containers in the community did not oppose them on true agricultural operations.
it's a good question.
No, Mr. DeLuca himself clarified on the record that he was not speaking about at real farms, and so I guess that would be my question, is are we going to exempt bona fide agricultural operations?
I can speak to that if you'd like.
Well, I just want a comment is, I personally am not saying personal preferences of this is why I'm voting that way, is what I said from the very beginning, is we had difficulty in trying to assess what the community wants when the community is not here. And once again, the community is not here with the exception of our 3 favorites. And so, you know, and then when we kicked it up to the boards, the board, and we were trying to balance that freedom and of what people, you know, can do with their own, and try and make it so it's appropriate for everyone. I don't think anybody, I mean, it may have been, our wording, our verbiage may not have been as concise as we should have it. But I think we're trying to create a balance, so.
Is there an answer though about agriculture?
Yeah, go ahead, Paul.
So this is an ordinance for accessory structures, so this would be accessory to a residential use. A farm, if it's part of their operation, then it would not fall under this category.
Thank you.
So, Paul, wait a minute, so the person then that is exempt, and that's great, the farms are exempt. What about the person that's driving around Salem and sees that sea container at that farm, and they don't like the looks of that, even though it's exempt? But then we're in a residential ag, and maybe we're not allowed to have them.
There's a lot of things on farms that people don't like,
Okay,
and it's the nature of living in the country.
okay, I'm good with it.
I think sometimes when we get caught up in some of these things, because we don't want, we don't want to tell people how high to keep their grass. We don't want to, you know, we don't want to get into that nitty gritty. What we're just trying to, you know, with the gravel driveway, or the one I'm struggling with is allowing someone to have something that they may want or use and can make nice, but does it fit within the community? And I guess I'm struggling with, I don't really see how a sea container, to me, that's more of an industrial kind of thing. I'm just, you know, trying to create that balance. Does it fit in, you know, if I put one in my yard, I've got 3+ acres, you know, and I screen it.
Yeah.
Does it fit? And I guess if it's screened and if nobody can see it, then what difference does it make if it's not causing a problem? So.
What have we done when they put the towers in? We had them screened, right? Because people didn't want to look at that, so we put trees around them and everything else, fenced them in. And the same thing with this. All we have to do is just have them screened. That's it. That
Right,
solves the
but
problem.
then we get to the screening and it's not completely screened, so do we want to have it
don't do the
completely
top.
screened?
If you don't do the roof.
If the roof is a problem, then I don't think there's a solution, because that's cutting
Just
fine
wanted to
hairs.
address what other people were bringing up at the board and
You
whatnot.
can build, maybe like a snow roof on them or something.
So there, prior to this, there's an example of someone who wanted to, actually, there's been two examples where somebody wanted to put those in, and we said, no, that's not an accessory structure, it's outdoor storage, because it's a storage container.
That's what it is.
And so we did require them to put it on a foundation and incorporate a roof on the top of it. And they used that as their base for their structural material for an accessory building, but it still had to meet those standards of being an actual building on a foundation with a roof. So that was done. There's certainly precedence for that. I think it happened, I know it happened at least once. There may be two examples of it.
In the township?
So as of right now, Paul, you need it on a concrete slab, and you need it screened, as of right now.
Based on the language we have here. But that language does not account for screening the roof. Section 60.09D talks about screening from view from property lines in the road.
So,
So if you have
most of
six-
the containers are 8 foot tall. So if you plant emerald greens or juniper or whatever, it's going to go 12 feet. And then the only way you're gonna see the roof is from your second story balcony or you're flying overhead.
Did you have a question? Did you want to comment?
I did, but you passed me up and I forgot about it now. I'm like, you guys are driving me crazy.
I'm sorry.
Linda has one.
Oh,
She probably
Linda.
remembers what I was gonna say.
Well, I have a question. We're talking about, and I was at the board meeting when Mr. DeLuca said he doesn't want to look down from his second story window and see a roof. How much are we gonna get into in this community where I own property, but the neighbor controls what I do on my property? And I'm not talking about that we should have junkyards, so please understand the context I'm asking the question. But how much should, and that's really why Michigan has a right to farmland, because this is exactly what was happening to farmers. So we raise cattle. There is an odor anytime you have livestock. So somebody comes in, they build their home, and Michigan has prevailing west winds, and there's an odor. And they began to take farmers to court. Well, agriculture, and I don't know if it's second or third right now for the economy. It used to be third after tourism, the automobile industry, and then agriculture. We have a very diverse agriculture here in Michigan. We have between 100 and 200 unique products grown in Michigan. And so the state recognized the value of agriculture. And so kind of the discussion you're having really is significant, because how much, if you come out here and you buy 2 acres, you get to control the whole neighborhood because you don't like something. TJ had something she said that was very, very important. And that's if you want to control and you don't want a rural atmosphere, then maybe you don't belong in Salem Township. Maybe you ought to be in Novi. Maybe you ought to be in Canton, where they have little tiny lots, great big homes. And I think that that's really what needs to be discussed here. Understand, nobody wants to live next to a junkyard. Mr. Reeves shared when he was looking to build his new homes, there were properties he wouldn't consider because of what was in the neighborhood. But at the same token, this comes back to property owner rights. And as a farmer, we get it all the time. We have big trees. Well, I should be able to cut down my big trees because the neighbors like to see my trees. Really? You pay the taxes for my trees? You're gonna tell me that I can't harvest a tree and get its economic value out of it because you like to see it? Then you should buy it. And to some extent, and again, please understand, I'm not trying to say anything should go, but within reasonable rules. Neighbors shouldn't be able to control everything that they can see. If they want to control everything that they can see, they need to buy the property. If you don't want to look at the neighbor's accessory building, I got a real good solution for you. Down where our East Farm is, there's a 40-acre field for sale next to us. Been for sale for probably 5 to 8 years. rolling topography, you can put your house down in one of the low spots so you can't see anybody. That's an answer. That's another solution. It's just not always sticking it to everybody else. And I think that that's, we have to balance that. We have to balance in the community that a lot of people moved out here, and I've heard it said at this table, I'm not real sure where some of the things have changed, although I assume it came out of the board and you were told their feelings and you're trying to respond to that. But people moved out here because they don't like government overreach. They don't want to live in Canton that says you can't have a motorhome parked in your driveway.
And I think that's, you're right, I mean, that's what we've been struggling with this whole time, and we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to assess what the community wants, but they're not quite here, but I think we, and then of course, everything was kind of kicked back from the board, so I think we're trying to just discuss that here, what they have, but I don't know if we all agree 100% with it, not all of us, so.
What I will tell you, Pam, from experience is, this hasn't gone to the community. There's been nothing in the newsletter. Nobody posted this on the happenings of Salem. We can. The last time we posted the blight ordinance on the happenings of Salem, and there was blowback, the supervisor got very angry because we posted it. So if you want to post it and you want community involvement, there are mechanisms by which it can be done. It's not been done.
Yeah.
So I ask, how much community involvement do you want? What I will tell you from experience, that any time that you pass something controversial, let's take a noise ordinance, you will have the room packed to standing room only, and you will have people come in that want to be able to ride dirt bikes, and they want to be able to ride motorcycles, and they want to be able to ride their snowmobiles, and then you'll have people out here that think that the only thing that they should hear on their property is a bird. Now, you'll get that, if that's what you want, go to whoever's a member up there of the Happenings of Salem, say, hey, we're having a discussion at the planning commission meeting, we want to discuss, should Salem Township allow cargo containers as accessory buildings? You'll reach hundreds of people, and then you'll get to hear the two sides. But at the end of the day, that's all it's gonna be.
Yeah.
It's gonna be two
Well,
sides.
that's what
It's
I'm
not
just
gonna
saying, we're
represent
not
what
trying to
6,000
push things on
people that
people,
live
or
here.
not everybody is, but, we're just trying to assess it, and, I don't know, I think I've made up my mind, I think I know where I stand on this, so I think I'm just trying to create more questions and more conversation, because it's on our agenda. Is there anything new? Let's talk about it. If it's not, let's, I say we, do something in moderation.
Well, in our community, you know, we talk about what our community wants. Our community is like anything but uniform. Like you go to, you know, Canton, very uniform. You know, Plymouth, fairly uniform, different size lots here and there, but ours ranges from a few houses that are probably on half-acre lots. What are some of our neighborhoods? What are our smallest lot neighborhoods that we have? Maybe half-acre?
Hamlet's quarter acre.
Quarter acre, okay, so we range from houses on a quarter acre to some neighborhoods that are on an acre to 40-acre farms to, so it's not, you know, our community is a bit more unique than others, so that's why I don't think it's a good idea to just say no to this for the entire community, because we are not uniform.
Yeah.
And different properties have different activities on them, very different activities on them. And they may need these for storage and can't afford a $20,000 building.
I think the biggest contention has been about the number of buildings in auxiliary buildings and what constitute an auxiliary building, because they talked about standalone gazebo. Well, that's an auxiliary building. You know, almost got to the doghouse as an auxiliary building, you know.
Not anymore.
I know, but it just, but it is, it's, you know, we need to be reasonable, and we need to be accommodating. And let's face it, what does the community want? They want a lot of freedom. They wanna be able to, as Linda said, they pay for the property, they wanna control their property within reason, without infringing on their neighbors. So I really think that the big issue on the board, I think, was about the auxiliary buildings, the number of auxiliary buildings. And to have the attitude of a
And the
person that
definition.
has 10 acres says, well, the guy that's got less than 10 acres, he doesn't need to have any buildings. You know, that's not right. You know, people can fit stuff on an acre and a half, an acre, whatever. They got the room for it, they can fit it. We just need to be reasonable in accommodating, and, you know, like TJ says, we have all different groups of people. So trying to find some kind of balance that won't be stepping on the toes of people, because some people feel, well, as long as you accommodate my situation, I'm happy. Well, that doesn't accommodate the other people's situation either. So, you know, I kind of think like the number of buildings and everything should be reasonable, you know. I don't think people are gonna put 10 buildings on a piece of property. I just don't see it, you know. It's not practical. From many different angles, it's not practical, okay? So
Well, I think we're moving in the right direction, because we started with 2, right? We started with 2 accessory buildings. So now we've included cargo containers. It's limited. I'm fine with the limits on it. I think it's a step up, it's a step forward. And now we're to the number of accessory structures. You know, those have doubled with, I guess, with, you know, it's less than 1 acre 4, 1 to 2 acres 5, 2 and greater 6. You know, agricultural is exempt. I guess, what's that?
Are the numbers good?
I think they are. I guess when I look.
5 accessory buildings on 2 acres?
Well, I look at if somebody's got a garage, if they got a pole barn, if they've got a pool shed, if they've got a gazebo, if they've got some other sort of shed, on 2 acres, I think that's fine. People are only gonna build so many buildings, right? I mean, if financially.
all auxiliary buildings are not equal.
And not everybody has a pool. So
Not
we're
everybody
gonna-
has a
Everyone's gonna
pool.
have a pool house and a gazebo, possibly.
So we've moved up, and I think it's in moderation. You know, last time we went too far and it got kicked back. So I guess I look at this as, I think this is reasonable, and if people come and say, this isn't working for me, well,
And they apply for a variance.
they can apply for a variance, or if it absolutely, you know, it's a stinky ordinance, it's, you know, we'll look at it again.
If they
but-
wanna take their 2 acres and put a dozen building on them, let them apply for variances on them, see where they go.
Yes, Linda?
So I think some of the problem, I don't think you have it fixed for people who aren't farmers. There are, and we have friends that have a pool and a pool house, because they have the in-ground pool. They have the gazebo. Then they have a barn with horse stalls. They have the riding arena, and again, they're not agriculture because it's a leisure activity. They would have a chicken coop, which would be probably your shed. And so right off the bat, and they're on 20 acres. Because of how you define this, they're already out of compliance. So I don't think you resolve this. I think that, first of all, I think swimming pools and pool house, those should be together. If you've gone to the expense of putting an in-ground pool in all likelihood, you're gonna have a pool house. So that needs to be one application of it. A lot of people, again, that have that in-ground pool and pool house, they have a patio with some type of structure, so that if you're seated out there watching people swim, that you get some shade and stuff like that. And again, I'm talking about, if I were to tell you who used to own the home, many of you would know the home. And they already have more than what you're now allowing. So this is not quite, the other thing I just say, this is just a housekeeping, but under 29 building A, yeah, pool house is in your list twice.
I just saw that, thanks.
So, but I don't think, again, that, I don't think you have it solved. And a lot of
you know
people,
what,
a lot of people have, if you drive through the community, they have a separate garage they have that pole barn. So, I don't have an answer for you, I'm just telling you that right now, if you adopt what has been presented, I can think of a number of properties that are already non-conforming.
And you could go through our community and cite them for probably every single ordinance, and I guess my thought is on that, I don't know if we're gonna find the perfect answer to make an ordinance that's gonna make everything perfect. A lot of people out of compliance, and you know, in election, it's just, it's because of all these crazy rules. I think if we need to create a reasonable rule.
These homes are
And,
not.
I mean, if it's,
Hang on, wait a minute, Pam, they're not, these are not people that have done this. I will guarantee the house I'm talking about, you go into the records, they have pulled a permit for everything that's been done at that house, and they have been inspected by this township. So these are not people who are rule breakers. These are
Oh, no.
not, they're
Well,
not
I don't
people
mean,
in
I don't mean
agriculture.
them, but I mean, if our current ordinance is the maximum of 2, then I bet there's a lot of people that are out of compliance because it's a poor ordinance,
But
it's
how are
inappropriate.
you getting your permit for your barn with your stalls, your riding arena?
How did they get it? How did they
That's what
get
I'm
it?
asking, that's what I'm saying to you, these are people, I know full well, if I gave the address, we could go in and pull the records.
But how can we, Linda, and I'm asking this seriously, how, because you've been in the community a lot, how could we possibly make an ordinance that's gonna bring everybody into compliance?
You're never gonna bring everyone into compliance, and that's not the goal of an ordinance. The ordinance is how much of an elitist society is Salem Township gonna be? That's what this comes down to. You had people on the board that live in $1 million homes, state publicly, that they don't wanna look at the roof of a cargo container. Okay, are we saying in this community that if you only can build a $250,000 home, you're not really welcome? And I asked the board to clarify that, and what we got back was, this is not about money. Well, sure it is. When people have a cargo container, sometimes they have a need to store something. They need to store it quickly, it's a way to do it. And you can have regulations to make them look nice, you can. But to say that if you have greater than 2 acres, or whatever you have, you can have 6. And again, Reggie DeLuca, who was one of the most vocal board members, and I'm not saying anything that's not public knowledge, he has a pool. He has a pool house. I don't know what else he has on his property, because I've never driven back to see. But what I'm saying to you is that I think that there's a way to handle it, it's to redefine some of these. I mean, you took out play structures, you took out dog houses, which I remember you had a big discussion about that. And I just think to make it a little bit more, I mean, there's a guy, I know he came in and talked to me, he has a barn, and I think he told me he's already got 5 buildings on it, and they're all really old historic buildings. He's got a couple old barns and smaller buildings, because years ago farmers had multiple buildings. You'd have a corn crib. You put your ear corn in it, and it had ventilation so the corn would dry and not mold. And if I were to tell you his property, many of you would know it. And so again, we're creating nonconformity because people have these already. And I'm just trying to bring it to your attention that I'm not sure that the number you have right now is correct. I don't have an answer, Pam, on how you do it.
Sure.
I'm just trying to bring it up to you guys that you are going to force a number of people, if this is adopted, to be a and I realize their grandfather did, but they will now be non-conforming lots.
So, Paul, I think that's, so then that is a question that I agree, I mean, is that, I guess I'm still
As you said,
kind of not
yeah.
seeing it. I'm seeing that this is a step forward and better than what we had without being extreme. The pool shed and the pool, I mean, a pool is an accessory structure.
That is what was in there. So that's not new language. I just left that the way it was.
What do you mean that you left what?
Pools in the definition. That was already part of the definition. I did not add that.
It is in the zoning ordinance, but I think it's
A
kind
pool
of
is
ridiculous.
all right.
Yeah, it is.
A pool is an accessory structure.
So,
In our ordinance.
so at this point, as you mentioned a moment ago, the ordinance says 2 accessory structures. So we're only making most people more conforming. So the examples that were given,
Does that make sense though, in swimming pools? I mean, since we're tearing this apart and talking about it 4 or 5 times, does it make sense that a pool is an accessory structure?
it's, I mean, it's
Is
typical.
it covered like under something else, like if somebody wants to put an in-ground pool in or something like that?
Covered under something else.
I don't know, get a permit for a pool, I mean,
You do have to get a building permit, yes. But I mean, it's typical that that's considered an accessory structure because it takes up space on the ground in the backyard.
okay.
So, I mean,
So if you've got a garage, you've got a pool, you're gonna have a pool shed.
not necessarily. I mean, some people do something.
A lot of people do, I mean, if you got kids, you need a place to store all their stuff.
But to your point a moment,
They got a lot of garage.
to your point a moment ago, the examples that we just given are already legal non-conformities because
Yeah.
we only allow for 2 in the zoning
Right.
ordinance right now. So this only makes most folks more.
Yeah. I know, I
mean,
guess,
so this was-
I'm still okay with that, I guess. Is there something that gives anybody some severe headache in here, or that they wanna change? I mean, let's speak now.
So, thank you. Everybody's spoken up.
How can people on less than an acre have 4 structures?
They could be a little pool and a little pool shed
Pool.
and then some other kind of
I mean,
shed.
a tough shed like you go to buy at the hardware store is,
But I thought it has to be a certain size. Those
200
are the
square feet or
size.
less.
200 square feet is the threshold for requiring a building permit. It's not what makes it an
It's
accessory
still
structure.
considered a structure.
Yeah, it's still a structure. So the smaller lots are gonna be regulated by your lot coverage.
Okay. Okay, yeah, it sounded like a lot to me, but.
4 does seem like a
but
lot,
if
but
it's-
the
if it's-
example of having a small
yeah.
gazebo and a pool and a shed and a detached garage, then you're at your 4.
Okay.
Attached garage to a house is 2 separate,
Detached garage.
or detached.
Okay, so you were lower on your numbers, so.
Yeah, but, you know,
You're okay
now
with
that,
it?
well, yeah, I mean, if you're talking lot size, you know, then I guess I can understand that.
Hey Pam?
Yes.
Now that you guys have put sheds in of any size, because the ordinance used to be the 200 feet, it says it shall be unlawful for any person to construct or cause to be constructed any accessory structure without having first obtained township zoning approval. It used to be you could go down to Home Depot and get a shed under 200 square feet and you have to get approval.
200 square feet is the threshold for a building permit, not a zoning compliance. You still have to meet setback
I
requirements.
don't
You
have to
still-
meet any, so,
Well,
I'm agriculture, so.
I understand,
that.
I
The
understand.
rules only apply to us,
I'm speaking-
Linda, you're
I'm
free.
speaking to your
To
question.
200?
Yes.
So
That's-
right
that's a
now,
building.
hang on, Paul, so just so I understand, right now, if my neighbor wants to go down and get whatever shed they're advertising in the parking lot at Home Depot, he's gonna come in here and get a building permit for you
A zoning permit.
to go buy a shed.
Well,
That,
I don't care if he buys it, but if he's putting it on his property, they need to demonstrate that they're meeting the setbacks and the,
I thought we talked about this at one
Yeah,
time,
it's
because I
really
know I
great.
asked Paul, isn't there like a minimum, and Paul, maybe you can, I don't know if we talked about this offline, but I said, wasn't there like a minimum square footage that was exempt?
For a zoning permit.
hey, Paul, if I have that shed on skids and it's not where it's movable, then do you still have to get the zoning?
I mean, those tough sheds or whatever you buy from the parking lot at Home Depot don't have to be on a foundation.
Right, so if you put them on skids where they weren't permanent.
So you just move it around your
So-
yard
So
every
someone's,
week?
yeah, like someone's gonna do.
Put on wheels.
No. People raise chickens where literally in something that moves
Yeah, we've got one.
TJ understands what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They're not bona fide agriculture again.
Right.
Do they technically, for that, need zoning approval?
Yes, because there are specific regulations about keeping non-farm animals in
Well, all they gotta
residential.
do is sell one egg and then they become bona fide agriculture. Just so I mean, that's all we're gonna do is force everybody to sell their neighbor an egg.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's very true.
I
That
mean,
right
that
to
is
farm
true.
it.
And that's the flip side, I just want you guys to think about.
Yeah, well, so
the
some of these things, I don't know, I mean,
ramifications of what
I
we're
mean,
I will
You can do a
never.
lot of
Is
stuff.
somebody gonna go to that length to circumvent the rules so that they don't
They're not
have to meet setbacks
They're
in
not
a
circumventing the
neighborhood?
rules, what they're doing, and I only know it because again, I know a lot of people in the community. They're planting pumpkins, they're selling pumpkins to one or two other people, because then their land is considered agriculture. They're selling eggs to a couple customers, because then they meet the guideline for a farm. That's what I'm saying is, if we make our rules so stringent that they're not common sense and they're not realistic, that's what we're gonna do, and then we truly lose control in the community, because people, and I will tell you, and I'm not gonna give you a list of who's doing it, but I know, again, a number of people that are growing some pumpkins, or they're selling a few dozen eggs, because then they don't have to come to the township.
And you know what? So be it.
Okay.
And, you know,
No, we're
but
good.
here's
We're
my,
good, Pam.
but my
I'm
question,
good.
but no, here's, I still have the question, and I don't remember what the
We're
answer
good.
was.
Yeah,
Why
we're
don't
good.
we have something that, like, I mean, for somebody to go to Home Depot and buy like an 8x10 or something like that, why do they have to come to the township for that? That doesn't make sense to me. Is that because that's the rule now? Can we change it now? I mean, or does that, you know, what am I not seeing or getting? Does it, you know, what slippery slope or what kind of other things am I making it more complicated by trying to make it simple? You know what I'm
So,
saying?
I mean, we have these rules in the ordinance that have been designed for a purpose, like, you know, how tall a fence can be, where a fence can be located, where structures, how large structures can be, where structures can be located. And so in order to enact those, we have people get zoning.
All you gotta do is sell them the
So it may seem like a big arduous task, but it's really as simple, and most people comply with no problem. It's very-
Does it cost them money?
There's a permit
Yes.
fee,
Like how much?
$50 to $100, depending on what person.
to put up a prefab shed.
I think I ask this question every time we mess with these ordinances, because there's always something that doesn't make sense to me. And I guess it seems like it should be more simple than that.
So we can certainly exempt those things if you want to. I mean, that's your prerogative. It doesn't seem like it has caused anybody any hardship or heartache.
Yeah,
to-
well, I
to be
guess
able
I
to-
think if somebody, you know, wants to just put up a little shed or a Home Depot thing or whatever, and it's, so under 200 square feet, so it doesn't have to go through the building code. So if it were, do you see what I'm saying?
Really, most of the time,
Am
people
I-
don't pull a permit for a little shed.
It's-
Let's be real.
It's
That's what I'm trying to be, is
Let's be real, let's be real.
So if you want to,
You know,
write
they go
that in
and
here,
they get a shed.
you can make an exemption for something like, and 200 square feet is probably a good threshold, because that is typical of what requires a building permit. So if you want to exempt that.
So then what that would do, I'm just trying to think this through, so if we do that, so it's under 200 square feet, then now I can hear Bart down there saying, well, fine, then I'm gonna go get 50 sheds that are all under 200 square feet and put them all over my yard.
No, because you still got in your ordinance that it's considered an accessory building. All you're talking about is it doesn't require township approval. You don't have to come in and go through an approval. You're not changing that it's an accessory building. I didn't hear that being said.
No.
Those are two different things.
Okay,
You're
so
still.
am I barking up the wrong tree?
Yeah, I think so. Because if I heard what you said, we're still limited to 6. So you can go down, if you had the acreage, your maximum number of those sheds would be 6. Okay, plus, so I mean, whatever accessory stuff you have, you still have a maximum of 6.
Right.
Well, we're 2 acres. All you're saying is if you're buying that prefab shed
Yeah.
under 200 square feet.
Why should it
you
cost you
don't-
another $100?
Correct. So So I don't think you're gonna see where somebody now has 20 of them in a row because they're
Right,
still
and I'm not
limited
really
by
worried
your
about
ordinance.
that, but I guess what I'm getting at, if somebody wants to buy those sheds and they're like, what, $6, $7, $8, $9, $1,200 or something like that, you know, depending on the size and what have you, then they gotta pay another $100 just to have it in their yard.
Hey Pam, I think one question right now is, under the review process, who goes to the property owner, to their property, and verifies that these sheds, because what I understood Paul to say is that they're not to be in the front and side yard setbacks. Who goes actually to the property to verify that they're not?
Well,
No, Pam, it's an important question, because if
Yeah.
no one goes to verify it, and a
Paul
zoning
does.
ordinance says I can't put something in those setbacks, you're giving the same amount of trust to the individual. If nobody when you build a house, the inspectors come. I know TJ built a barn, my guess is the inspectors came out and inspected her barn. Bruce is building a house. They come out to make sure that you're compliant. So are we simply having, it's a paper exercise where you come in, you do a little drawing, say, here's where I'm putting it, someone approves it. That's just an exercise for somebody's job. Or do we actually have somebody that goes to the site and verifies it? Because if we don't, then what's the benefit of having someone push paper?
So Pam, if you want to have me write in an exemption for those things, that would be perfectly all right. We can leave it as a
I'm trying to
structure.
bring about the discussion to have some peace with it, and,
Well, I think we can simply exempt it if you think that that's appropriate.
I think we should.
And we'll leave it as an accessory structure. It still has to meet setbacks. And then folks need to,
they just don't need to pay for.
Right, on their honor, and if they do happen to put it right on the property line, and
Then we'll
a
know.
complaint comes in, and then we can go and tell them that they need to move it.
Does that make sense to you guys?
Simple solution. Is that what you
Does
guys
that
want
make
to do?
sense? Oh my gosh. Do with this.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with
Yeah, it
this
doesn't
stuff.
have anything to do with this.
Blame Linda, she's the one who gave me the idea.
Which, good call, bring that up though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
No.
all right. Okay, can't please all the people all the time. I'm fine with this as it is.
So if this passes and somebody wants to have a seventh structure on their 15-acre property or something like that, how much, so what process do they have to?
ZBA.
They go to the ZBA. How much does that cost, 500?
1,500. 1,500. 1,500 to 2,000.
Because it used to cost, I mean, we went
$500?
500.
$500.
$500?
I mean, yeah.
No, that's the fee to get on the agenda. You also have to escrow money
There's no
reviewed by
escrow.
the consultants.
There's no escrow.
That's kind of teasing.
I know we didn't when we did our barn 4 years
I
ago.
don't know, when the library wanted to come in and put in a drive-in window, it cost us $3,000. That's what we had to write checks for in that office.
That was
For a homeowner, though,
ordinance
for a
tax.
homeowner to go for a variance for one more building, $500, that's quite a bit for a homeowner. To get a variance for one building, I think.
So the fee
Bob, that's
structure is
based
set by
on
the board.
cost.
Hmm?
So that's based on cost. To have a meeting, you're all paid. In fact, actually, it doesn't even cover costs anymore.
Is she on?
It's what you're paid, it's to cover the notifications in the paper. That, because again, if you come to ZBA, it's supposed to be a neutral thing, that the taxpayer doesn't pay for it. So the applicant has to pay the costs. If it's only 500, it really is a bargain, because I think you all get $100 or more now for each meeting, and I assume ZBA gets the same. I think, Daryl, you're on ZBA, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what somebody gets per meeting? What's the pay
Let's
per
talk,
meeting?
I don't
You
think
know,
we need to get
looking
into
at
all that.
that makes sense.
Let's-
That makes sense.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering
it's
how
supposed to
much.
cover costs.
That makes sense.
Paul says
What
$500,
process?
let's move
Yeah.
forward, okay.
Okay.
So does anyone else have anything they wanna bring up to talk about this?
No.
Okay,
Good to go.
all right, so we
should
have
do that
a,
fall meeting.
Where's our cheat sheet of?
Yeah.
I lost it.
Dan, can you clarify for those of us back here, are you guys gonna move this forward to the board, or are you gonna wait to get the revisions that you talked about tonight? Where you're gonna exempt the sheds under 200 square feet?
So I think that you could make a motion to move this forward
And
with the
include that?
condition that we make that change to exempt sheds under 200 square feet from requiring zoning compliance.
How soon will that draft language be available for the public to review?
When it goes in the board packet.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
When it goes in the board packet,
It won't be available prior? By law, draft minutes have to be available within 8 business days from the meeting. Will the minutes of this meeting include the changes that are being proposed?
is that normal, right? Is that normal?
The 30th of August is June.
The 30th of August?
So we'll just get the draft minutes in the minutes.
Okay,
So, if I may,
yeah.
I would suggest the following language: sheds under 200 square feet are exempt from requiring zoning compliance.
Okay. And that's the only one we had, right? That I recall. Okay, so do we have a motion? Do we have a motion? So, motion to recommend approval for the following changes. Exempt, or sheds that are less than 200 feet are exempt from required zoning compliance.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval of the proposed zoning ordinance text amendment to the township board with the following changes. The sheds under 200 feet.
200 square feet.
200 square feet are exempt from required zoning compliance.
Did you have a question? Does that come after?
You second, and then you go to discussion.
Okay. Do we have a
I
second?
second. I second.
Okay, Kevin seconds. Yes, go ahead.
Was by zoning compliance,
Permit.
yeah, mean setbacks and everything, or just permit?
Probably
Because
add the word
it-
permit there.
Yeah, it
Okay.
sounded like it meant on any zoning
Zoning
issues at all.
Zoning permit.
Zoning compliance permit.
Okay.
Permit, okay.
Good catch.
Okay. So sheds, okay.
So if the mover and the seconder would accept that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so Dan, do you accept that TJ wanted to add zoning compliance permit? It should just add permit, because it's not all the compliance with the setbacks and whatnot.
Correct.
And
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes,
you're
so that's-
good with
Yeah,
that?
accept that.
Okay,
Setbacks, but no permit fee.
right. What'd you call that, a what, a friendly what?
Friendly amendment?
I like friendly around here. I really even like the word friendly. Great. Okay, so we will do, I'm just gonna read it one more time, and then we'll do a roll call vote. So sheds less than 200 square feet are exempt from required zoning compliance permits. Permit. So,
Pam Morlow,
Yes?
Daniel Begier,
Yes.
TJ McClellan,
Yes?
Kevin Frost, yes. Daniel Leverett,
It's middle name.
Daryl.
Daryl Leverdansky,
No, no.
Robert Rizzo,
Yes.
Okay. Reports of commissioners and correspondence, board trustee. None. CBA.
ZBA, we're meeting on the 8th of September for the first, our next session. That's it for now.
Daryl, can you tell us what you're considering?
What's that?
What's on the agenda for consideration?
Oh, I don't know, I haven't seen the agenda yet.
Okay, thank you.
We usually get it the week prior.
Thank you.
Our land preservation conservation guy is in the
No.
audience. Anything to add?
Nothing major to update, we're still
No? Okay.
working on properties.
Okay. Planning consultant review, anything we need to know, should know?
No major projects, couple of home permits, generator, roof, one pool.
Any issues, concerns, people are bringing up complaints in regards to our ordinances or anything that would be helpful to us?
Nothing in particular that I'm hearing right now, but the board did pass a motion to hire a code enforcement officer for part-time. Oh, sorry, am I stealing your thunder?
There was that, no, I said there was nothing, then I thought, yeah, there was that.
So they're hiring someone when?
They already have.
Oh, they have?
Yeah.
Just as
About time.
current.
50
Oh,
bucks an hour.
okay, okay.
$50 an
I didn't know
hour,
when,
they wouldn't answer whether it was travel time too.
I didn't know when there was a start date. When do they start?
We're scheduled to have a meeting with supervisor soon, so
Oh.
ASAP.
Supposedly,
Interesting. Okay.
Very interesting.
Let's see, what do you say? What was that? Okay. Approval of the minutes of June 21st.
I make a motion to approve to the minutes of June 21st, 2020, as submitted.
I'll second.
Public comment? Linda?
According to my calendar in the Open Meetings Act, the draft minutes should be available by August 26th. Would it be possible for me to get a copy of those electronically?
Okay.
I'm not sure whether your recording secretary or your actual secretary of the planning commission needs to provide those.
Okay.
But the Open Meetings Act requires that they be available 8 business days after the meeting.
Your zoning,
That's
FOIA
good.
coordinator will get them.
Okay, if you would email to me, and I would appreciate it, thank you. And if I need to do it formally as a FOIA, let me know.
I'm sure we can do it informally.
Well, normally I get a packet for your meeting, and I did not get it, I went to the website, so I don't know if I'm on the blacklist right now or what.
Oh.
I didn't get one.
Screwed up with the power.
Yeah, but and it might not be your fault, because remember, we were hit hard by the power outages.
I don't know,
So just, hey, we're gonna DTE this tonight.
Chairperson comment, none. I think I've said enough.
Oh, hey, Pam, I do want to say one more thing. Thank you again to
Just
the
a second,
planning.
guys. Hold on, I can't hear.
Thank you again to the planning commission tonight for listening and allowing us to have input into what you are doing. Thank you.
Oh. Well, you know, we try to, I know we don't, we try and say, like, when it's gonna be contentious or whatever, you have 3 minutes and you have to be ready to call, but when it's smaller, more casual, we like to be casual to get the input. So we appreciate our public. Yes, Ms. Bond?
That's fine, I don't like it when people do that.
Oh,
This is,
okay.
by the way.
You're-
Any they're all over, and it's not going to be a local person. Thank you, that's all.
Okay, we are adjourned at 9:21.
I'll have it straight.
Well, Bruce, what's your opinion on the car pass now? You were one of the names.
Well, we're all.
I don't know, I never heard anything.
Well, you were one that was.
Well, you're not here, you don't get the vote.
Probably would you push up to
Bruce?
Fine.
Bruce? I missed a wonderful opportunity